Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, Fazbear Entertainment would like you to put your hands together for the one, the only, Freddy Fazbear.
Rewritten! Content warning. This video is not made for kids. It contains graphic content like violence, serious mental illness, and heavy abuse. Because we are in the perspective of abused characters afflicted by mental illness, their inner monologue may seem to suggest that they should be hurting themselves. This is not the case at all. Me portraying this mental illness is meant to show the audience how the illness works inside of the mind of the afflicted person so they can sympathize and maybe stop themselves from following a similar pattern in the future. Be careful if you're easily triggered. You're most likely about to enter the mind of someone who is heavily afflicted by illness and abuse. Viewer discretion is advised. Don't look, you're okay, Gregory, you're okay. Freddy's reassurances barely penetrated the swarm of horror that was ravaging Gregory's mind. The sound of Vanessa's impact with the ground kept replaying over and over in Gregory's head. The banging clatter of her suit, the wet thud, the crunch. Gregory had nearly been hit by her falling body. He had finished extending the stairs back down to the floor only a few seconds before she was shattered against the rocks. There was nothing the other animatronics could do to stop it, even though they had finally gained access to where the final stand had taken place. And Moon's throat was being torn to shreds by scream after scream, each one more heart-wrenching than the last, amounting to a crippling, unimaginable pain that never ever receded the entire way down. Driven absolutely hysterical by grief, Moon staggered past the last few steps of the stairs and threw himself on top of her like he thought that he could pull her back to life. No, please come back, I'm sorry! Moon begged, turning to the others and trying to draw them closer. Please help! Call an ambulance or something, she's hurt! Vanessa had fallen over 100 feet through the air onto solid concrete. It was clear to everyone else that she was far past just hurt. But nobody wanted to actually say it to him. They were all held hostage by shock, watching as he tried to perform CPR, even though Vanessa's chest had completely caved in. Gregory had expected himself to be more triumphant in this moment. James was avenged. Vanessa would never harm another kid again. But listening to Moon's devastated wails made it impossible to celebrate. Gregory buried himself in Freddy's arms, the bite wound burning worse than ever, his stomach twisting into icy knots. Chica and Roxy joined him, seeming to gravitate towards Freddy as they searched for something solid to hold on to in the middle of all this chaos. Bonnie was in the same state on Freddy's other side, but even the smell of his rust wasn't enough to make Gregory let go. It felt like they were stuck at the bottom of the stairs for hours. Nobody knew how to help Moon at all, only able to watch him as he sobbed and clung to the empty remains of someone he had thought of as a daughter. Gregory had wanted to stop Vanessa, but he hadn't wanted this. When Freddy drew back from Gregory, he was disturbed to see that the big metal bear was crying too, just like the animatronics clustered around him. His mechanical body didn't appear to be capable of producing tears, but Gregory could recognize the expression, how the glow in his eyes flickered on and off like a dying light bulb. Freddy had been very good at hiding any sounds that indicated how distraught he really was. Gregory, Bonnie, all of you, Freddy told them, managing to stay steady. You're gonna have to turn around and face that way. Do not look until I say so. Okay? Gregory, Bonnie, Chica, and Roxy all nodded, doing as they were told, staring directly at a corner of the scrap dump. Gregory listened as Freddy left them to mumble something to Monty. Monty had been the only one to not instinctively go to Freddy. Instead, he was frozen like a statue near the place where Vanessa had fallen, at a loss of how to help. Chica, Roxy, and Bonnie resorted to each other as a source of comfort, trying to hold themselves together. Even if they had not known Vanessa as closely as Moon, they had still lived with her for all of their lives. In Bonnie's case, he had literally gone through the worst points in his existence with her by his side. Behind them all, Freddy and Monty's footsteps began to approach Moon, who was still pointlessly trying to resuscitate Vanessa. Freddy said softly, I'm so sorry, Moon, but we can't help her anymore. Get off of me! Moon lashed out at Freddy, the sound of clanging metal making Gregory jump. He fought the temptation to turn around, fixing his gaze firmly on the rocks. Don't look. Freddy and Monty seemed to back off, waiting helplessly for Moon to figure it out himself. I'm so sorry, Vanny. This wasn't supposed to happen. Please, wake up. Moon was rambling deliriously, the popping and squishing of splintering bones sending disgust slithering up Gregory's spine. Moon was obviously still trying to bring her back, but Gregory could imagine that every push to her shattered chest would only pump more of the gore out of her suit. Moon's cries rose into a shriek, so sudden that Gregory reflexively snapped his neck around to see if there was a new danger. The moment he saw what was left of Vanessa, he couldn't tear his eyes away. There were chunks of meat and bone. Dark fluids leaked out of the crevices in her metal plating. And her head, it could hardly be described as a head anymore, the way that her skull was opened up. Moon was scrambling back from her, looking down at himself and heaving with repulsion, trying to get away from the lifeblood that was now staining his clothing. He feebly attempted to wipe the mess off, but it stuck to him no matter what he did. Moon eventually gave up and collapsed to the ground, screaming his agony into the stone floor. When Freddy reached towards him this time, Moon finally accepted his embrace, any dignity or unfamiliarity entirely forgotten in his pain. Gregory's eyes were still pinned to the unrecognizable pile that used to be Vanessa, out-of-control nausea flooding up his body. Roxy grabbed him and forced him to look away, just in time for Gregory to throw up into the scrap dump. He coughed and spat, the image of her carcass burning through his eyelids every time that he blinked. Even though Gregory had grown to hate Vanessa, he only felt horror from witnessing what happened to a human body after falling from such a height. He firmly faced the wall again like the others, wishing that he had listened to Freddy. Monty, could you please... Freddy began shakily, swallowing and continuing in a clearer tone. We need her keys. He didn't have to say anything more. Right now, Monty was the most collected. He was the one who knew her the least. Moon rose in protest at first, but Freddy tried to explain that she was gone, that he had to let her go, that they needed to return Gregory to the surface. Gregory plugged his ears to block out the sound of Monty sifting through her remains in search of the keys. There was sloshing and crackling, and he pressed into his ears harder, causing a wave of nauseating pain from the ear that had been torn to ribbons. His own pulse thudded against his palms, the crunch of her impact fidgeting around his skull like a trapped horsefly. What was going to happen now? When the Pizzaplex opened, people would see everything. What if they blamed Freddy? What if they hurt him? Would Gregory have to go back to his mom? Anxiety began to bubble up inside of him at that thought. He was already anticipating her wrath, the force that had chased him and his brother out into the streets finally catching up to him. His brother. What would they do about James? A sharp, ringing pressure swelled inside of his mind, not yet bursting, but getting close. There was still a part of him that didn't want to believe that it had really happened. It didn't feel real. It felt more like it was happening to someone else far away. He just felt stuck. This wasn't the answer. This couldn't be the answer. There was no way time would be able to continue after such a disturbance. It felt as if the earth should stop turning, ensuring that tomorrow would never come. The sun would not dare to rise again after what happened down here, because all of it, it hadn't happened. That wasn't his brother. You can't do this. You can't just do this to James. But still, the world kept marching on forwards carelessly, not bothered that he needed space to process what all of this meant. Something touched his shoulder. Gregory yelped as if he had been electrocuted, whirling around to see Freddy. He hadn't heard him come close. Moon was still crying uncontrollably, huddled close to the bear's left side. Chica, Roxy, and Bonnie soon tried to do the same, burrowing into his warm fur, barely leaving any space to breathe. Freddy's stomach hatch was open, offering a safe space between it all. Gregory climbed inside, letting the hatch close, pulled into the warmth of Freddy's inner workings. Only when he was relieved from the temperature did he realize how cold it was down here. It was almost like this new chilling reality had disappeared just as he was desperately hoping. He was safe, completely safe. Everything would be okay if he just stayed with Freddy. Because of the broken viewing screen, Gregory was only able to listen as the outside world drifted past.
I got it,
Monty said, the jingling of keys joining them. There was another whimper from Moon, so close to Freddy's left side that Gregory could feel the vibrations of the sound. Freddy and Monty began to try and move Vanessa's remains while the others closed their eyes. Squelching and snapping noises made bile rise in Gregory's throat. Moon only cried harder while Chica and Roxy tried in vain to soothe him. And then the compartment jostled back and forth as they made their way up the stairs, slowly and gingerly working together to try and pull her along, her broken limbs knocking against every metal step that they cleared. Several times they had to stop to reposition their hold after a particularly loud crunch. They struggled to keep her parts together in one piece, often needing to take several minutes to collect themselves between each platform. Eventually, Freddy's steps leveled out, the dust of the storage room seeping into Gregory's lungs again. He could hear the distant buzzing of flies. "Wait," Gregory said. Freddy's compartment jerked down, the others gasping for breath, pausing to rest. But even though Gregory couldn't see a thing, he could imagine where they were and how close they were to... "We can't just leave James down here," Gregory said, the words barely making it out of his trembling body.
I'll go back and get him once we're out,
Monty offered. Nobody objected, so they gathered themselves and continued. When Vanessa's key opened the storage room's secret door, DJ was waiting for them outside. The darkness of Freddy's fractured screen showed him none of it, but Gregory could hear DJ's startled notes and the panicky, sweeping gestures of his questions as they communicated back and forth in ASL. Freddy was probably trying his best to tell him that they had found Bonnie alive, and then explain how things could have possibly gone this badly immediately after such a fortunate discovery. Gregory was just numb to all of it, his innards frozen solid. "Can't leave James," his shell-shocked thoughts kept on repeating. "Can't leave James, we can't leave him down here, I can't leave without my big brother." Monty's footsteps split away from them, heading back down to the storage room, giving Gregory hope that James would be out of the darkness soon too. DJ took Vanessa off the hands of the others, leading them across what sounded like the main lobby, Moon's endless sobs echoing through the cavernous mall. Before he knew it, all of them had stopped. He couldn't see it for himself, but Gregory could feel that they were standing before the exit of the Pizzaplex. With the compartment's walls pressing in on all sides, Gregory felt like he was stowed away in a coffin. Every nerve in his body stung, his head's grisly bite wound throbbing with pain, his thoughts chopped up and blurred at the edges. He wanted to break the paralysis, to get out and face the morning, but he just couldn't bring himself to. He didn't want to see the sunrise until James could see it too. The fact that his brother couldn't actually do that anymore still hadn't really sunk in. He was still clinging onto the hope that he would wake up soon. Even waking up in his filthy, unforgiving home would be better than this. There was a loud clank, then the rippling of metal gears. A tiny, dwindling golden light pierced through the breaks in Freddy's shell, beaming directly into Gregory's eye socket. He blinked, the scarlet after-image blinding him for a moment as he tilted his head out of the way. He realized, as the light grew, that he was seeing the morning sunbeams, which were now peeking through the exit's glass doors. Monty must have opened the entrance remotely, back at Vanessa's office. A sharp gasp was heard, Moon's arm sliding off of Freddy's fur to hold onto himself instead. Gregory could imagine him covering his eyes with his one remaining hand to block out the new day's light. A frantic voice tried to punch its way out of Moon, sliced up with sizzling glitches. "What's going on? Why are you crying? What's happening, Moon?" "It's okay, just let him out. You can rest now," Freddy said. Moon only sank to the floor. I can't show Sonny what happened. DJ played a few gentle notes, his creaking weight looming closer. Moon collapsed into miserable sobbing, unable to keep it together anymore. His cries were muffled soon after, followed by more resonating chords, signifying that DJ had embraced him and was doing his best to comfort him with what little he had. Gregory stared at the shattered black glass of Freddy's viewing screen, which was now framed with golden light. He couldn't quite feel his own thoughts. He couldn't really move either. He was just sitting there in the safety of Freddy's compartment, his brain having a hard time processing what he had been doing all night. Gregory wasn't crying yet. He thought that he should be sad about what happened, that he should be screaming and wailing just like Moon had been. But the tears wouldn't come. This didn't feel real. The loss felt more like some predatory creature, something that would pass him by harmlessly if he just waited underneath Freddy's protection for long enough. Just hide. Wait. It didn't actually happen. Just wait, you'll see. Gregory's heart spasmed in his chest as he heard Monty's footsteps returning. He leaned up against the hatch, listening intently. He wasn't sure what exactly he was expecting, but he got nothing except a dull, scraping noise as Monty lowered what must be James beside the remains of Vanessa. The gator's breaths were ragged and strained, like he was fighting back the urge to gag. "James?" Gregory called, his hands braced against the hatch. "Are you there?" The writing compartment wasn't opening. He kept trying to push his way out, realizing very quickly that Freddy must be manually holding it closed with his arms. "Freddy, let me out," Gregory said. "But please, I want to see him." Freddy didn't respond for a few seconds, like he was finding it hard to speak at all. I'm sorry, Gregory, but you shouldn't have to see this. "No, let me out! I need to see him!" Gregory protested, beating his small fists up against the hatch. "James, you're gonna be okay. We made it out. We can go home." No response. A deep, corrosive emptiness spread through every organ, every vein, every cell in his body. And finally, Gregory was hit by the reality of what had happened. Emotions returned, and they were agonizing. Horrible, overwhelming grief assaulted him, harsh and without mercy, furious that it had been ignored all of this time. This wasn't a dream. This wasn't a nightmare. This was not his imagination or a mistake. James was gone. He was gone, and he was never coming back. Gregory pressed his head against Freddy's hatch as the built-up pressure finally burst out into an explosion, allowing him to truly feel what he had lost tonight. In movies, when a person cries, it's shown to be a beautiful or dramatic thing. Just a few silent dewdrops trickling softly down the character's cheeks as their face stays monotone and bleak. That was not what this was like. He didn't sniffle quietly or delicately. His face twisted up into an ugly red mess, the tears joined by snot and spittle clogging up every part of his airway as he cried and cried and cried, so hard and loud that his ears rang and he could hardly breathe. He buried his face into his knees until he felt faint, weeping and shuddering with a pain that would never end, every thought in his head growing louder and louder, closing in on him all at once. He should have done more. He should have followed James into the building. He should have been killed here just like him. It wasn't fair. Gregory deserved that fate, not James. It wasn't fair. It wasn't fair. It wasn't fair. I'm sorry, Gregory, Freddy whispered to him. I'm so sorry. Gregory couldn't tell how long he stayed like that. Maybe hours. But eventually, the outside world barged in on the scene, beginning with the early morning clock-in of the animatronics managers. Freddy gasped at the sound of the glassy entrance doors being flung open. Immediately upon entry, many angry adults began yelling at them. Oh my God, what are you all doing? What happened? Holy... Is that blood? What is all this? Hey, get back! Get back from them! What did you do? Freddy flinched violently as if he was about to be struck. But instead, there was a beat of silence where nothing happened. Where are your collars? One of the managers demanded, confusion and fury and fear all fighting for dominance inside of their voice. We had to take them off, Freddy tried to explain. Vanessa was... Okay, no. Stay right there. I'm calling the police. One of the managers interrupted. The animatronics stood back and watched in helpless silence as the manager exchanged information with the authorities. I'm at Freddy Fazbear's Pizzaplex just down the street from... Yeah, we just got to work, and I think the animatronics here just murdered 2 people. Gregory wanted to object, but he felt too hollow to correct her hasty assumption. Of course they would think that. The animatronics were covered in blood with 2 corpses lying in front of them, and there was an obvious lack of the shock collars that would usually restrain them from acting out. Gregory was still hidden inside of Freddy at the moment, and he wasn't sure if he was supposed to get out and show himself or not. If he did, he was worried that they would take him away from Freddy before he could vouch for them. What if the adults hurt Freddy? What if the officers just killed them all on the spot? They've done worse for stupider reasons. One of the managers were still talking to the 911 operator, trying to explain what they were looking at. No, I haven't... No, there's no pulse to check. The kid is decomposing and the other one is completely crushed. No, we can't do CPR. Her brains are everywhere. What part of dead do you not understand? That description drove another strangled scream out of Moon. He crumpled down to the floor, overtaken by a wave of unbearable anguish, but another manager continued to bombard him with insensitive questions. Did you do this? What did you do to her? Get up! Answer me! The stomps of DJ's feet thundered through the tile floor, coupled with several loud and harsh notes like he was trying to get the manager to leave Moon alone. Wait, how did that get up here? Where did you find it? The third manager had to be talking about Bonnie, who was trying to hide behind Freddy. The manager laughed with a cocky attitude. "Oh, just wait until Miller gets here." He didn't recognize the name Miller, but the way that Freddy tensed at the mention of him let Gregory know that Miller meant danger. The managers weren't able to get any coherent answers out of them in the amount of time that it took for the police to show up. When they did, the scene erupted with the clicks of loaded guns and the hollering of confused adults, mostly comprised of, "Get on the ground! Wait, don't shoot! I have a kid with me!" Freddy started yelling desperately, barely heard above the commotion. "I have a kid in my compartment! Please don't shoot him!" "You have a what?" "There's a kid in my riding compartment," Freddy explained rapidly. "Please don't—" "Let them go, now!" they demanded. "I'm not gonna say it again, pal! Let them go!" I will, Freddy stammered. I will, just hang on. The grown-ups stopped yelling, their panting breath thickening the air like heavy fog. Keeping his movements slow, Freddy opened up his stomach hatch, letting the morning light pour inside. Gregory squinted at the sudden brightness, every eye in the room watching him intently as he was revealed. The blood-red sunrise behind them made it difficult to see the adults' faces, their features hidden in deep amber-brown shadow. Gregory could only really make out the glints of light from the cops' drawn guns. All of the other animatronics were lying on the ground obediently, reduced to piles of dull feathers and fur, their glowing mechanical eyes wide and terrified. Gregory tried his best to not look at the two limp, mangled bodies beside the glass doors. Freddy lowered him to the floor, giving him a few seconds to adjust. "Now let him go," a man said, gesturing with his weapon. Freddy didn't immediately obey. He needs help. He's hurt, and I don't think his mother is stable. He ran away from— "Let him go!" The officers ignored Freddy's concerns. "He's not hurting me!" Gregory snapped, choking back tears. "He's the only reason I'm still alive!" They didn't back off, but they didn't advance either. Freddy looked back down to him, the worry in his eyes painful to see. "I'll be okay," Gregory stammered, even though he didn't want to leave either. "Please, let me go. I don't want them to hurt you. Bonnie needs you." "Okay," Freddy said, turning Gregory around so he could look him in the eye, holding his little head in his massive paws. He was careful not to touch the bandages where the bite marks were, surprisingly gentle for someone of his size. Freddy's pupils flicked back and forth between Gregory and the weapons that were aimed towards the rest of his family, his jaw tight with anxiety. "Gregory, you're going back to the outside world, and I can't protect you out there," he said. "If your mom is hurting you, you need to get out of there and tell an adult. You deserve a better life." His words were rushing faster, having so much to say to him in so little time. "You did everything right tonight, okay? You were so brave and so strong, and you got out of here alive." Freddy gave Gregory one last big hug, holding him close and burying his snout into his hair, a movement that made the cops give an agitated warning. "I'm so proud of you, superstar," Freddy told him. Gregory stayed there in his warm arms, tears continuing to burn down his cheeks, realizing what this meant. This was goodbye. He might never see Freddy ever again. No, wait, he wasn't ready. They couldn't take Freddy away from him. He had no one else to go to. Far too soon, Freddy was forced to let him go. The cops viciously pulled Gregory away from him as if he had been holding the little boy at gunpoint. Just like that, the policemen descended on the animatronics. They obviously had no idea what to actually do in this situation. It wasn't even possible to arrest a robot who couldn't fit in handcuffs, but the guards who usually monitored the animatronics in the Pizzaplex arrived very soon, this time with the proper electric prods, taking them off of the police's hands and dragging them further into the Pizzaplex. Gregory caught one last glimpse of Freddy's bright comet blue eyes. He was scared too. Then Freddy was whisked away, off to parts and services for their boss to deal with them. A scary-looking police officer took Gregory, asking him questions about how he got hurt, trying to figure out his name and where he lived. And then Gregory was outside. A breeze ruffled past him, carrying fresh air that didn't smell of pennies or dust or pizza. The sun, the real sun, was only just peeking above the horizon, sending brilliant rosy violet hues across the sky, like a watercolor painting. Gregory raised his arm to block the golden light. He could hardly comprehend what he was seeing after so long trapped in the pizzaplex. Had it really only been 9 hours? It felt like a lifetime. 3 flashing police cars and an ambulance blocked view of most of it, but between each bumper he saw healthy green blades of grass, clean white streets, grocery stores opening up with yellow windows. It was all so far away, across a vast empty parking lot, but it was there. He saw a family walking down the street. A little girl pointed in confusion at him. Shiny cars rolled past, slowing down as the silhouettes inside tried to see what all the fuss was about. It was here. The world was all still here, exactly where he left it, despite everything. He was out. He was finally out. Yay! Gregory survived! So, my progress on the rest of the rewrite. I'm kind of ahead right now. I'm done writing, voice acting, editing, and adding sound effects to Chapter 28, and I'll be moving on to, finishing up Chapter 29 after that. Chapter 29 will be the first chapter of Act 4, and once we get to that point, I'll make a whole video laying out how the schedule is going to change from then on. Next Monday, I'm going to be starting up college again, so I might disappear for a few days. But once I come back, I got ideas of other videos that I can do in between, like a blooper reel or me showcasing how I make sound effects. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed the episode. If you liked it, please remember to show your support and like the video, comment on your favorite part, and subscribe to the new channel. I'm not yet qualified for monetization because I don't have enough subscribers and views yet, but hopefully soon I'll be able to start earning money from all the hard work that I put into this project. So, yep, that's about it. Bye! Hope you enjoyed. Woo, I already said that. I feel really dumb now. Bye!